One.
All right, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. We have a great event on tap. This is going to be a good one, folks. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if you have a question for either of our speakers, please, at any time, please go ahead and use that question and answer tab right there on your interface and submit the question. We'll try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. We also have that very interactive chat feature that I love so much. So I do encourage you, if you've got a question, comment, suggestion, whatever you want to shoot over to us, please use the chat feature, send it on in, and we will monitor all of the chats that come in, and hopefully we can chat you back. And finally, at the end of today, we have polling questions too. I think we have at least 3 polling questions. So hopefully you guys will keep an eye out for those as they come up on your screen and answer those polling questions. And then finally, at the end of today's webinar, we are doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Trusted SBOMs Delivered with the JFrog platform and AWS. This is going to be a good one, as I said. Our speakers today are Bill Manning, who is a solution architect at JFrog, and Raj Jarapatula, who is the senior partner solutions architect at AWS. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for joining me. I'm so excited about today. I'm going to put myself on mute, take myself off camera, and let you guys get right into your conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlene, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. As stated, I'm Bill Manning, and my cohort here is Raj. Raj, say hi.
Hello, everyone. Raj here. I am Senior Partner Solutions Architect at AWS, based in San Francisco Bay Area.
Excellent, Raj. Thank you so much. So let's kick things off and dive right into it, right? The agenda today, we're going to do a quick introduction like we just did of who we are. I'm going to talk a little bit about the JFrog platform with some of the things that we do, but we'll be talking mostly about software bill of materials. We'll also talk about geo-distributed DevSecOps and hybrid solutions and migrations from data center to AWS. But the main focus of today's conversation is definitely all about the SBOM. But first of all, just in case you don't know who I am or who I represent, so I represent JFrog. We're known as the Universal Binary Repository Management Company. We've actually been around since 2008. We have a lot of employees, a lot of customers, and really we are as an end-to-end DevSecOps solution, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Also, too, just so you know, we are actually trusted by over 6,000 customers, over 70% of the Fortune 100. We're a trusted solution for your end-to-end DevSecOps needs, and we're going to go dive into it. There's no really reason for me to kind of stick on this for a minute, but really what it comes down to, what is end-to-end DevSecOps? And what we've done at JFrog is that we've actually created a platform that allows you to go from everything from your developer to your deployment, or your code to cloud, or we do some work with some agencies out there that are like 3-letter and whatnot. But the idea is that we provide a system of consistency. So managing those third-party transitive dependencies, indirect and direct, build management, and the idea behind the JFrog platform is it's encompassing. So like I said, those third-party transitive dependencies that we'll talk about today, or talk about the build process, and how it all encapsulates down to the ideas of what is a software bill of materials. We're just designed to deploy anywhere you want. We have SaaS solutions, but AWS is one of the primary partners we have, and we'll talk about later on how you can actually go in and sign up for a 30-day trial, how you can utilize your credits against that. And then Raj and I will also discuss how you can utilize our platform if your company has that kind of idea of moving from, say, self-hosted data centers up into a cloud offering like AWS, and how you can utilize the platform for that. But when we use the platform, we talk about binaries. It's all about binary security, management, and software bill of materials. We offer a bunch of different offerings. So first of all, Artifactory, Universal Binary Repository Managers. It's the cornerstone of our company. It's where it all started. It's binary management to its fullest. Then we have our Xray product, which is our security, compliance, and license vulnerability scanning tool. We're going to go through and discuss some of that because that actually is a big piece of the SBOM. Now, when we also talk about software bill of materials, it's not just the software you're producing, but the entire life cycle of it. So that includes also getting it into your environments. And that's one of the reasons why we also have JFrog distribution. It's kind of a roll your own CDN. It's a way for you to get your binaries to where they matter most for deployment, but do it securely. And one of the features we'll talk about today is that when you are creating your software and around the software bill of materials, how you can also have it. So like I said, so it's not just its inception, but it's also its deployment. We also have our pipelines product, which I'll talk about today. It's our CI, CD, and CI orchestration tool. It's designed to be high-end and highly scalable. It's meant to also maybe extend your current CI platform or enhance it or replace it. And we can talk a little bit about that, but one of the key factors of this is part of the software bill of materials is having things like signed pipelines. So digitally signing the actual steps you do to incorporate into your software bill of materials. Also, too, how you can also go in and create approval processes that are thus also recorded as part of this. At the very top of this, we have Mission Control and Insight. It's a way for you to gain access and an overall view of how your system is performing. And you can tie it into things like Splunk or any other monitoring tools to say, what's my velocity? How am I doing as an organization? Am I addressing all the security concerns that I have? But the idea is to go from your developer all the way to your deployment. And we'll discuss that today. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we have a lot of examples around this. Let's get to what we're all here for, software bill of materials. So let's talk about, first of all, what does that exactly mean? Well, back in May, the Biden administration came out with an executive order for improving the nation's cybersecurity. What that really means is that they needed to address and come up with a way to ensure that any of the software that you're producing or building and you want to work with the government, you need to be able to provide this level of information to them. And it's actually written right there. Basically, it's a way to enhance the software security supply chain. You know, this is one of the biggest problems. And so that anybody who works with the government needs to provide a software bill of materials, both for anything being directly or indirectly published somewhere. So this way they can go ahead, diagnose, dissect, look for any sort of root cause analysis. It's just a way, and you can go in and take a look at what software is being used. So if there is a problem, it can be easily addressed. It's funny is because it's actually been the original inception of the software bill of materials comes from the FDA. So the Food and Drug Administration originally put the concept out there. It's actually been around for a while, but the thing is that whenever you buy a box of, like in this case, like cake or whatever, one of the things is you need to know the ingredients, right? This includes not only what was made, but things that could be harmful to other people. And the FDA took it upon themselves to say, hey, by the way, because they cover medical devices, and there were some issues with some medical devices that were in the field, they took it upon themselves to say, by the way, before something gets put into a device that could potentially kill someone or hurt someone severely, we need to know what software is in there just in case something comes about, or we need to know why something failed. And so the software bill of materials was the concept. But the real catalyst was from in 2018, was when the National Telecommunications and Information Administration came in and said, hey, by the way, we also need better software transparency into how things are being done. So the FDA and the NTIA got together and started putting together this idea. It's a way to make sure that if you're using software, you know what's in it, just like cake. Now, it's not only just a list of software. It includes all the libraries, includes anything proprietary or free. It also any sort of environmental and system information, versioning, tooling. There's a lot of information that needs to be packed in there, and we're going to break down some of that today. But the idea is that when you are using the software bill of materials, it's actually very freeing in a way. And once you come to that regulatory standard, yes, I said it was for the government, but the thing is, as you know, a lot of these standards are going to bleed into the private sector, especially around regulated environments, such as medical or fintech or anything like that. But this is a way for you to go in and ensure that when you give it to your customers, you're giving them the sense of a purpose that they can look at and go, yes, this is, we know what's in here. And instead of just being a black box in delivering. So who is it used for, right? That's another question we get a lot. And I do a lot of these talks publicly, and I also do a lot of these talks with our customers. And really what it comes down to is that there's many different avenues in which companies are looking for this. As I mentioned before, medical devices is a big one. So a lot of hospitals, a lot of medical institutions, before they bring in a device, because the device is only one part of it, of course that goes through the testing, of course that goes through the standard, of course that goes through an extensive process, but at the same time, you need to know what's running in that. Or medical, or anything like financial or anything like that. But it's a way to inform, customers, and say you're a software producer. It's a way to inform them that these are things they're using. And if something happens, it's a way for you to inform them that they were also possibly affected by that. And we're going to dive into that in detail. So the big benefits is that it's a nice way to catalog things. It's also a way for you to also look at legal avenues, such as license compliance in governments, right? So understanding, like if you're using software, does the licenses adhere to the standards or the regulatory requirement that you have for your industry or for your corporation? In a way, it allows you to go in and look at basically any risks that could come about from any sort of new vulnerabilities that are, maybe introduced as part of your product. And we'll talk about that too. But in addition to this, it also allows you to go in and see how your product is developing over time. So when you produce the bill of materials, you can compare it. You can look at it and say, here's how we've changed as an organization during the time. But also, too, it's a way for you to ensure that you can also protect yourself in some respects to say, hey, by the way, we knew this was a problem. We gave you the information, and we're working on fixing this. And when we are working on fixing this, this also means that these are the versions that you need to be careful of, and these are the versions that you need to go to. Because remember, free and open source software is free, but it's like I love the old quote, right? It's free as in speech, not as in beer. The thing is that understanding that all that software that you produce is actually derived from other components, right? And when we say FOSS and we say free and open source software, just so you know, all these ideas also comply over to the idea of even paid software too. But I always like to talk about free and open source software. I'm a big proponent of the open source community, but you do have to understand some things about it, and this will affect the way in which you utilize the SBOM. And understanding that is the reasoning why this is a thing, why everybody's talking about it, why it was a mandate. And we'll dive into it. SolarWinds was the big catalyst. Everybody knows this, right? This is the one that affected over, 18,000 customers. I mean, it affected some of the largest branches of our government, including things like, the Department of Defense and others. And the thing is that it could have been preventable, but it wasn't. The idea, if you're not familiar with it, is that SolarWinds has the Orion product, right? You've all probably read what it is. But the attack itself was very sneaky and it was very, very well orchestrated. So the attack itself was based on the fact of an indirect dependency, actually. So remember, when you're building software, most of your software is someone else's, right? It's like 85 to 90% of your software is someone else's software that you use to construct it. They went ahead and they created an indirect dependency for a dependency for the Orion product. It was ingested in, and it was a sleeper. It came along for the ride. It wasn't even something that was like directly put in. It was a very well and orchestrated attack. But this attack, the thing is that when they went into the investigation, it happened to be a nefarious component that was an indirect dependency for another library that was used to build the Orion product itself. Because the thing is, remember, 85 to 90% of your software is open source. It's someone else's software. And the scary part about this is that 95% of that has some sort of, basically open source core based, and the other side is 75% at least has one vulnerability. One. I mean, but it's much more than that. I can tell you that now after looking through hundreds and thousands of binaries that we've evaluated over time through our product. The thing is that most of them have something that could be either addressed or prevented. And the reason why I say that is that 49% of most code bases have at least one component with high vulnerability risks. And this comes into the security side of the SBOM. And the thing is, the scarier part is 90% of the applications use at least one or more open source component that is outdated by 4 years or more and was abandoned. Think about that. You're building software to redesign and rebuild the world, and you're using old and outdated stuff just because it's there. right? That it hasn't been addressed, but you want to know about it. So if you're building your software, the bill of the SBOM brings this to the forefront. So when you give it to the customer, they can go in and say, hey, by the way, we analyzed the pieces that you used to construct your software, and we found this because this was something that was actually registered in NIST or like one of the open source, like OWASP and other databases that have all this nefarious information surrounding it. The best part is, though, 75% of all applications with vulnerabilities can be fixed with just updating the library. And if you're using, say, something I'll talk about in a minute, like I said, of course, I'm going to talk about JFrog. If you're using our JFrog product with our Xray component, if there is a update, if there is a potential fix for this, we will give you the information for remediation so you can address this. Now, let's talk about the typical development cycle and how this works. And if I'm a developer and let's say I'm building an application, maybe I'm going out, I'm pulling in my third-party transitive dependencies, I'm getting my work done, I compile my software, and I go ahead and I'm about to ship to my customer. Well, say there's something wrong here. Say there's a vulnerability that was found in one of the third-party transitive dependencies I'm using. Well, you know what? I actually just got that into my code, and then eventually I've actually given that to my customer. I've actually put my customer at risk. I've put my company at risk. The thing is no company wants to be a headline in that way. Nobody wants to be, so-and-so company released some software and, 70 million records have been, released, and it was all due to a single library. Go talk to SolarWinds. That was the thing, is that was $1 billion cost. This could be $1 billion fix for them to remediate this across the board. But it's not just there, too. It's also those indirect dependencies. Just because I have a direct dependency that might be clean, remember, every dependency relies on other dependencies. So when you're bringing in those third-party components, you're also bringing in indirect dependencies along with it. And what if there's an indirect problem with one of the indirect dependencies? Well, that gets correlated directly into the direct dependency. And then once again, it makes its way to your customer. Thus, the reason why you don't want to be a headline. Now, let's go take a look at, say, something like the software bill of materials. Because now we have those third-party transitive dependencies again. And the one nice thing that's about it is that all that information can go into the actual software bill of materials so they know what version they're actually utilizing. And when they know that, you can get delivered to your customers and they can say, okay, that's great. Here's all the actual components that we're using, all the direct and indirect dependencies, and other components too. And we're going to talk about, by the way, this is only one part of the software bill of materials, but it's an essential part of the software bill of materials. And what's cool is that if something did happen, you can notify your customers to say, hey, by the way, you know what? We actually, in the software that we produced for you, we actually had an issue. We're working on resolving it. You could be a little bit more proactive in your approach because you can then inform the customer that there was something there. Now, the best part is if you use the proper tool like our platform. Of course, I'm going to plug our platform again. But the thing is with the software bill of materials, if you have a tool that manages these third-party transit dependencies, that manages these build processes, it gives you the ability to say, hey, here's all the versions that we have that were actually affected. You know how far back it goes. You understand what you need to do to address this so that you can ensure and notify your customers that, hey, you know what, by the way, we had a problem with these versions. If you're using these versions, please go ahead and update to the latest version. But this also allows the customer to go in and say, hey, we read this. There was an article that said there was something wrong with this version of a library. We checked our software bill of materials. It seems that these three are infected. It's a bi-directional thing, but it allows you as a customer or consumer or developer to be a little more proactive in that approach while notifying your customer or the customer coming to you and saying, hey, we read this and we found something that actually showed that there was an issue with the software you gave us from 1.1 to all the way to 1.3. Now, this also comes down to even more complex applications, such as things like Docker, right? You have an OS, you have a runtime, you have an application layer. These are multitudes of factors that have a lot of complexity behind them, meaning that you need to understand a lot of things. Even at JFrog, we have our, you can use our Artifactory product as a secure Docker registry, and every time you publish your binaries, or in this case, publish your Docker image up into Artifactory, we can actually produce the bill of materials. We can also let you know, are you using a proper base level OS without any issues? Is the runtime actually pertaining any vulnerabilities? Is your application? We do deep level scanning through every single component of the actual container itself, and we can also produce a software bill of materials around it, because we understand not only what's inside, what was used to produce it. Are there any system variables that were set? Is the version of Java for your Java application different? But this allows you, once again, to go in and even things like, you say you're running a web service where you have, you're running Helm, and you say you're running it Amazon, you're using EKS to deploy your application. This also allows you to go in and see what are potential threats in your runtime environments, because you know what's been deployed, and you can produce even a larger software bill of materials. We at JFrog have this concept, which I'll talk about in a bit, which is called a release bundle. And that's a bill of materials of a bill of materials. So this way you can actually even extract a larger like web sales service, where you can package up your Helm chart and all your Docker images into a release bundle and know the contents, know all the constructions. It has RBAC. There's a lot of things behind this, the release bundle, and it's digitally signed, so it's tamper-proof. So this way you ensure that when you're producing something and you have that information, that you have something that you can actually say, hey, by the way, this is a trusted content, and we can show you the trusted content that we have, and here's all the information behind it. Now, let's just talk about a typical workflow you might have as you being, say, a developer or a customer, right? I'm a developer. I develop, say, NPM packages. I've got my package.json where I'm going in and I'm designing my the third-party transits I need. I do an npm install and I pull from my remote repository. This is a very typical kind of development structure. When we introduce our platform into the mix, the biggest thing about it is, when we have Artifactory, is that we have a thing called a remote repository. We proxy those third-party transit dependencies through Artifactory, and we deliver it to the actual developer. What this means is we provide consistency. So say you have 1,000 developers internally, and you're building an application. That first first developer that brings in, say, a library you need to build your product, all 999 other developers will use the same one, right? This provides a level of consistency. Then when you build your software, you would store it in a local repository. And one of the key factors here, and we'll talk about this in a bit, is as part of the software bill of materials, you can design your repositories to match your software development lifecycle, your SDLC. So you can have dev, QA, staging, and production. You can go ahead and promote those builds through the build cycle, collecting as much information as you can. Collect your QA results, collect, say, your user testing results, put it into staging, and have all that information. And you can apply this to the information in your software build materials and say, hey, you know what, build number 42, did it pass our QA testing? Let's go look at the results. And in Artifactory, when you publish those objects and you promote through the cycle, you gather all that information to make everything you do more complete and comprehensive in the utilization of that, because it's just metadata. Then you can encapsulate that into a thing called a virtual repository, in which you can actually have a single level of interaction with your tools. So it's not just developers, but it's also CI processes. And then it's very simple configuration change to start using our platform. Once you do that, suddenly now you have a place to store those third-party transit dependencies so that everything is the same. Everything is succinct. So this way, if you are delivering your software, you can go in and diagnose, and you know what the libraries look for. You can see the direct and indirect dependencies. You have a map of how things are actually constructed. Then you introduce something like our Xray product, and you can make sure they're safe and secure. Look for anything that you might have, such as vulnerabilities or license compliance issues. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But that can also prevent you from releasing software to your consumers or releasing it as a web service where vulnerabilities come in, where everything can then be opened and people can have it. You could jeopardize the things that you do, and have it as a stopgap to stop it before it begins. When you implement our Xray product, we have IDE plugins for developers, so they know the third-party libraries they're using are safe and secure, both direct and indirect. You can auto-scan as part of Artifactories. Every time you produce a build, you can even have it so that anytime a developer brings in a third-party library, both direct and indirect dependencies, you can evaluate them before they use them. If a new 0 day is found, it can stop the production of your software to let you know, hey, by the way, you're about to introduce something that is going to go ahead and cause you a world of hurt in the future. This is a very big component of what we do. So we have reporting and analytics. You can also look at violations. You have also an analysis map, so you can go in and see how, what builds has this affected? How long have we introduced this? How long have we jeopardized our organization by exposing our software having some sort of issue or problem? You also have component metadata and component analysis. These are massive parts of things that you need or you can utilize for the software bill of materials. And when we're going to talk in a bit, one of the coolest features of this is also when we start you can integrate this into your CI process. Stop something before it begins. Do auto builds. If you're one of these GitOps organizations where every time somebody checks something in, you send it off to a build server, and the build server builds your software for you and lets you know, hey, it's been built. You can integrate into the process and get all that level of detail, all that level of information. And on top of that, we'll talk about how you can also integrate into your software bill of materials with things like approval processes to make sure that you understand, did it go through all the gates that we had? Now, when we talk about automation, for this one, I'm going to talk about JFrog pipelines. Now, you're not just relegated to, you can use other ones such as, GitLab, or you can use code build from AWS, you can use Jenkins, whatever you want. But in this case, one of the things is that we do have some pieces of our JFrog pipelines product that you can go in. It's all based in YAML. You can templatize it. You can build your own steps and processes. There's no plugins. That's a huge relief. It's all based on native API and integrations. In addition, it's highly scalable because you can design the runtime environments to actually build your software. Whether you're building Windows things, you can use a Windows container because it's all in Kubernetes. You can use Ubuntu. You can use a CentOS, right? Doesn't make a difference. Customize your runtime environment to do this. But also, we'll talk about is the fact that we also have, like I said, we have signed pipelines and approval processes. And I'll go into detail about that because this affects the software bill of materials. And then lastly, don't just stop where you're producing software. Let's talk about getting out your software to where it needs to be, whether you're producing, IoT updates for devices or phone updates, or you're doing things with automobiles like we do. Or things like AWS, you're deploying it into regions around the globe. We have companies like Riot Games and Epic Games. They're actually two of our big customers, and they're deploying tens of thousands of components daily using our distribution method, to getting it out to where it needs to be globally through the AWS infrastructure that they have. But understanding this also means that all this release management components also filters back in to being part of the software bill of materials. You're extending it because you want to know the life cycle, the SDLC. SDLC just doesn't start with your developer and ends with the release. It also has to deal with where does it go? How has it been used? Where is it being utilized now? The thing is understanding that is really one of the key concepts behind the software bill of materials. And our platform really helps you get there because it's encompassing everything from developer to device, deployment, code to cloud, whatever you say in your industry, we've got you covered. Because one of the things is that every time you actually publish anything into Artifactory, when you're building your software, if you follow our best practices guidelines, is that you actually get all this level of information. You actually get all the, the information about, what dependencies were used, what environmental and system information was actually used. You can see all the information about vulnerabilities. You can see any JIRA tickets you have associated to it or any sort of ticketing system you use. One of my favorite features is the fact that you can actually even do a diff between software builds, and that includes Docker images. You can actually go in and do a diff between two Docker images and see what's changed. Did the way it was built change? Did these version of Java that's running change? Did some of the third-party libraries change? Having that information is extremely important to addressing things like software bill of materials, number one, but also to ensuring that you're providing software that's safe to be consumed. And lastly, if you actually go ahead and you utilize things like our release history, which is our promotion API, one of the nice features of that is that you actually get the history of every phase of your SDLC as you went through it. And then if you look to the right, it says buildinfo.json. That is the raw JSON format that you can ingest and utilize to create a software bill of materials that's more comprehensive to you. But this also means that we also know everything. So if you take a look here with our Xray product, like I said, this is actually the scan of a Docker image. And inside this Docker image, we actually found, if you look, it says there's a com.fast.xml, jackson.core. We found this jar in a jar of a layer of an image of a build. But to the left of that, you can see that we actually also have a fixed version. Remember I said, you can address the problems you have as an organization most of the time, security problems, leaks, whatever, by simple updates to the third-party libraries that you're using. And we actually give you that information, not only here, but we also give it to you if you're a developer in the IDE with our plugins. And we support like VS Code, Visual Studio, IntelliJ, Eclipse. But having all this level of detail really helps you get to where you have a solid software bill of materials that you can offer to your customer, because you're securing software and providing them with what works best for them and what they need. Understanding too, when you are looking at this, and part of this is, as I talked about before, is when I showed the information about here's the affected releases that that happened by one of the issues. This is where you can actually, I call it blast radius, right? So being able to see if I found a library that has a problem, I could see its transitive dependencies, both direct and indirect, but I could also tell you every place it's been used, not just the single build where it's being used, but I can show you every build where it's been used. Now, I talked a lot about the software component, right? And I did talk about the fact that, understanding the process, the delivery mechanisms. But one of the things about software bill of materials that's quite essential is understanding what tool was used, right? When was the software built? So even those third-party transitives, how old they are. Are they one of those abandoned projects? You understand what software it went through, right? SDLC it went through. What FOSS was used as part of this? What was the environmental? What are vulnerabilities? What are the settings for all this? And understanding that really helps give a comprehensive view of everything that you're utilizing or doing. And we talk about promotions and things like that. Understanding that is, some companies want to know, hey, did it go through all your testing phases? Now, this could be an internalized thing too, because you're going to want to audit your software. And with our platform, you can do things like approval processes, like I have here. I talked about promotion. So being able to promote your binaries. So if you follow things like 12-factor application method or multi-tier or any of the modern DevSecOps strategies, one of the key components behind it is the fact that you actually have to, you should understand and promote the atomic unit. The same thing you produce should be the same thing you release. If there's variance or deviation, those are problems. And this allows you to have that level of detail that you want when you are creating your software. I also mentioned in our JFrog product, one of the things that I love, this is a new feature we introduced about 4 months ago. It's the idea of signed pipelines. Look, producing your software is important. And if you need to, and you have to, some companies will actually ask to say, I want to know, the processes you went through. But how do you prove it? So one of the things that we've actually done is we've integrated into our pipelines product, and you can extend your CI into our pipelines product to gain this feature. But it's a way for you to have a digitally signed step as part of your SDLC. So say you went from dev to QA, you can have a digital signature that says at this time, at this moment, we actually moved this software product from this phase to this phase. This also allows you to have a level of compliance and also regulatory standards where you need to go and improve this if something did go wrong. And also, too, having that visibility inside of the interface and also being able to pull it out of Artifactory, being able to pull it out actually of the JFrog platform is a great piece for auditing, right? So your audit teams will love you. Your release teams will love you because the fact that these are definitive times and steps that have happened, and you can use this as proof of development. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is that I gave you all this information. I talked about all the pieces and components, the third-party transit dependencies. And one of the things that we have at JFrog, and this is becoming a very big thing for us, and we have a lot of the customer base that we have very interested in this, and they love the idea behind this is building a release bundle. A release bundle is an immutable bill of materials, okay, of the software you're doing. And it's not just the software for a single instance. It can also be software of software. I talked about web services before. It could also be like, say, it's a jar file with instructions or whatever. But you can package that all up together and know everything about the software you're producing, how it was made, what was used to make it. Does it have, do you need some sort of level of RBAC behind it, right? Having that level of control. You can also use our Xray product to do one last scan before you distribute it or send it out. I mean, we use this as a way to work with a bunch of companies that have air-gapped environments. If you're familiar with air-gapping, then you understand no internet is a problem. Well, with us, you could actually take these release bundles that you're utilizing with all this bill of materials information, and you can actually download it and then use one of our edge nodes in a physical location that is air-gapped and upload the software in there, and you have all this level of detail available. And what's cool is that with our platform, using our JFrog pipelines with distribution, you can even automate this. And like I said, you don't have to replace your CI. You can enhance it. You can extend it. You can add in these other security functionality and components so they work best for you. And all the while, you have a comprehensive view into the way that you've built your software. This includes being able to track it and trace it down to its end level achievements, right? So understanding it from its inception to its consumption is a key factor in what the platform brings, and how the software bill of materials really is everything you need to know about the software that you've produced. And the idea behind it is understanding what was used, how it was used, what was used to make it, who touched their hands on it, did it go through the SDLC process, was it utilized and sent out in some sort of packaging, and where was it utilized? And having that information will give you the ability to have the highest standard of materials and understanding. Your legal team will love it. Your sales team will love it when they get asked the question. And then the ability for you also to go in and extract this data to see how you're actually running as an organization. So first of all, I just want to say thank you, and let's start talking about some other stuff, and then I'm going to hand this off to Raj in a minute. But here's some things. Won't SBOM be a roadmap for attackers? No. It will not be a roadmap for attackers. But you know why? Because you don't need to disclose your source code, which is the second question below. You don't have to. This can be compiled software. All this is just it's like when you go and you look at a box of like I said before, I showed the box for brownies, right? Just because you know the ingredients doesn't mean you know how to utilize it, right? Or how you actually mix it together. But you could. But the thing is that you would need that source code as a way to do this. And also too, it does not affect your intellectual property at all. It has nothing to do with that at all. All it has to do is here's my software, here's how I built it, here's everything you need to know about how I built it so that you know what I use for my ingredients. So if you want to know why my software is so tasty, here's the reason why, but I'm not going to tell you because the chef never reveals his secrets, right? Now, I'm going to start talking about things like this because we're going to talk. I'm going to start it off, and I'm going to have Raj kick in. But one of the key factors here is that organizations and understanding how SBOM works, understanding how software is built, is not a single site implementation. It's not a single location in most cases. Everything from startups, now with COVID and everything, ever being geographically diverse, down to the largest corporations in the world, one of the things is ensuring this level of detail, ensuring the consistency across your organization, being able to have software produced globally while still producing enough information using a thing like the software bill of materials to ensure that you have that consistency in your organization, that you're safe, you're secure, you're compliant. Being able to have the information knowing that you produced something and it went somewhere. But also, when you have like our JFrog platform and you're hosting it either self-hosted or in AWS or any other option, because we're very open to how you install it, you could actually share these binaries. You could share this information between all your locations through replication. So we have both push-based and pull-based. We have star-based and mesh-based. We have event-based and cron-based. And then we just recently introduced the easy view switches, being able to federate this information globally so you can have it so that developers anywhere in the world are all utilizing the same components. They're utilizing the same builds. They're sharing information. They're putting their test results in. They're giving all that information to make everything you produce and do safe, consistent, and compliant. And now, one of the things we're going to talk about is that, this is from the AWS side with us and together, is that most companies, when they go ahead and they start on premise and they start moving to cloud, you want to be able to bring, as you say, up to AWS, you want to bring this level of consistency into that structure. And using our Artifactory, and this is actually as our JFrog platform, we get asked this a lot by companies to say, hey, I've got a mandate. We used to do a lot of stuff in our own data centers. We have a TCO. We're going to go ahead and, as part of this TCO, we're moving everything to the cloud. And if you use our Artifactory installation with the platform and use our replication, this allows you to migrate those processes from your self-hosted data center all the way up into something like AWS, where you can have multi-region global support, remove some of the TCO, and have also this information to make sure that your SBOM is now, and all the things you're doing are now somewhere else, and up in the cloud, up where you need them to be. And Raj, I don't know if you want to jump in and if you have anything to say while I'm here. Oh, just take over. Here we go.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Great talk on SBOMs. Now we will talk a bit about modernization and cloud migrations at AWS. Once again, my name is Shashi Raj. I am Senior Partner Solutions Architect at AWS, and I work with various ISVs, independent software vendors, AWS partners, specializing in cloud management tools and DevOps to develop joint solutions and accelerate cloud adoption on AWS. So let's quickly jump into what we do at AWS. So let's talk a bit about modernization. As the definition says here, it's the process of progressively transforming legacy applications and infrastructure to take advantage of cloud economics like cost and operating models, including scale and agility to build, deploy, and operate cloud native and accelerate cloud innovation. So what is the goal of modernization? How do we do it? So the goal is increase innovation velocity by maximizing resource utilization, adopting modern development techniques, shifting operational tasks so that you can lower costs, and finally, focus on high-value activities like increase agility and reduce risk. So what are the drivers for migrations and modernization? So some of the drivers are like cost reduction, agility and staff productivity, improved security and operational resilience, outsourcing and hardware software end of life, data center consolidation, digital transformation, going global quickly, mergers and acquisitions. Finally, new technologies like AI, ML, IoT. So these are some of the drivers that are very important for migrations and modernization. Some of the challenges with application modernization. So lack answers for planning. For example, loss of knowledge about the original code structure. You might have a code base like 10 years, 20 years, and you might have not even touched that. So it's like a legacy code now. Hard to aggregate into single view across tools and services. So if your company is like 10 years, 20 years old, you might be accumulating so many tools and services over this time period of 20 years. And some of them might be used today, some of them might not be. So it's very hard to understand what they are doing today. You don't understand application usage and requirements. Like second-gen monitoring solutions, you might be having some monitoring solutions that were built in-house, or it were bought by some SaaS company. That company might not be there anymore, but you might be still having those software still running on your infrastructure. Too many tools with disparate data and logs. So now you have so many tools and you're getting all this data and logs. So what do we need to do with all these things? How to ensure service levels? No unified view across on-prem, cloud apps, and infrastructure. Finally, too much time looking for root cause, like virtualized and dynamic infrastructure increase complexity. Multiple tools, dashboards and logs used by multiple teams. So here is a mental model for the migration process. You have 5 different phases of typical migration project. First phase, you are never going to move applications until you know how much in ROI, that is return of investment. What are my current costs and what am I going to save? In addition, you validate the organization's readiness to move to cloud from 6 different perspectives, like cloud adoption framework, governance, people, business, platform, security, and operations. Now, let's talk about the mobilize phase. You start performing detailed discovery and put a plan in place. There are many tools to help iron out the challenges of portfolio analysis, right sizing, application prioritization, and application grouping. In migrate and modernize phase, different workloads require different tools. How to track the migrations, how to accelerate the workload mobility, and how to validate the performance and scalability benchmarks. In operate and optimize phase, customer starts adopting modern ways of adopting cloud operations by automating monitoring tasks, remediation tasks, and ITSM tasks. So let's talk about the 7 Rs. So every early cloud adopter CIOs from large enterprise have told us that they want to jump straight into all refactoring of all their applications to take full advantage of the cloud. But this can result in a lengthy design process and before moving the first workloads to the cloud as we rewrite applications. Based on that, we advise you take advantage of significant lift and shift opportunities to get your cloud migration started quickly, which also means getting cloud experience and seeing cost savings quickly. This can jumpstart your refactoring effort. Additionally, you can always refactor after you lift and shift and have gained more cloud experience. Once some basic discovery and assessment have been done, each application migrations tend to follow one of the 7 different paths, which is built upon the 5 Rs that Gartner coined in 2011. We outlined 7 as they include relocate, rehost, replatform, repurchase, refactor, and retain. So we will talk more about this in maybe in another webinar where we deep dive into all of the 7 Rs. So some of the challenges with application modernization. The transformation of modernization of application drives the modernization of security to a cloud-first model. This means a complex revisit on older on-prem approaches to security, a move away from hardware appliances, and a move to cloud models that use AWS accounts and organizations. We want to build a long-term plan with our customers to access all of their critical enterprise applications, help them understand their potential in AWS cloud, and design a strategy for not just migrating them to the cloud, but also for modernizing them to unlock the business value. Migration and modernization are not disconnected things and are not one-time events. During modernization, we are seeing many companies want to modernize the subscription and provisioning and tracking of third-party software. There are 3 key considerations to migration and modernization success. Disconnected and incomplete data. Look at your existing applications, architecture, source code, infrastructure. What are the present SLA, OLA? What tools are used for static code analysis, runtime code analysis? Discover and organize data. Use something like microservices, containers, ECS, EKS. So architecture to scale and operate efficiently. Converting 100 VMs into 1800 containers might not be the answer without foundational operations in place. So let's talk about infrastructure automation. Use infrastructure as code. Use something like CloudFormation, Terraform. For database, use purpose-built database like RDS, DynamoDB. Aurora serverless. Builder for platform, use code pipeline, Jenkins, and for network communication, use APIs like API gateway. Decoupled services, use microservice, containers, again, ECS and EKS. Some other things to consider are operations readiness, operations automation, and operations integrations. Organizations must adjust their operating model if they want to transform and deliver successfully. The business model of the future will be data-driven, platform-enabled, and ecosystem-centric. So organizations have to secure they have the right architecture in place, they review and adjust their processes, they choose and the right technology. And above all, as a critical success factor, they need to have the right organization and instill a culture of innovation, agility, and collaboration. From studying over 1,200 migrations that AWS has done, we have seen some patterns in the use of consulting partners. First and foremost, our data shows that customers who use a consulting partner get the migrations done 25% faster. This isn't just due to the participating in change management, but because they bring experience. It gets customers to get desired business outcomes faster. The skill gap is the single biggest obstacle the customers innovating at pace, which enables them to stay relevant and capitalize on market opportunities. In many instances, the customer's IT team have been busy keeping the lights on and has not had the time or resources to invest in upskilling to accommodate the rapidly changing needs of the business. Another dimension we observe is that during migration and modernization, IT department do not want to do some work, whether it can be infra management or network modernization or application development. A partner can offload this undesired work for you. And all of this frees up you with time, the customer, to focus on the skills you want to develop. We have the broadest set of tools over to simplify migrations. I want to highlight 3 significant changes. Migration Evaluator. We have taken over 2019 acquisition of TSO Logic and have launched it globally as a customer accessible website experience called Migration Evaluator. Application Discovery Service now has released a network dependency model that captures and shows the network resources that make up an application. Finally, we also rolled up AWS Migration Hub to 6 more regions across APAC and EMEA and introduced better visibility into migrated applications and their resources once more. We have certified over 130 AWS migration competency partners that can help you with your migration journey. These partners have large migration practices and experience delivering large-scale migration projects. So as you start the portfolio analysis, bringing in an expert who has done it before. Customers tell us that they want us to introduce partners who are skilled appropriately in AWS. We have expanded our migration certified partners from 50 to over 130 now. Some of these firms may be expert in one environment, such as SAP, but others may be global in reach and span multiple industries. So as a close, we have 3 guidelines for you to walk away with to successfully transform, migration, and govern your application portfolio. The insight I remind you is born of our looking at over 1,200 migrations around the world and from a current 800 engagements we have today. Be selective on which apps to transform. They take time and people, but pick the right ones and get moving. Plan to migrate and modernize many more and retire 10%. Build the tools and processes for new cloud operating model. Use the new well-architected management and governance lens and the 20 vendors we have integrated into 9 AWS services. Choose a trusted and certified migration partner of whom we have over 100. So with this, thank you, and I will hand it over back to Bill to continue his presentation.
Great, thank you. Let me just share something really quick, and then we'll wrap this up and give plenty of time for the fun and good bits of the free stuff. So, really quick, one of the things towards the end, thank you guys so much for taking the time to be with us today. So I just want to talk about some of the resources that are available. So if you want to learn about Artifactory, first of all, we have the JFrog Academy. I placed a link to our JFrog platform in the site, in the chat on the side. We have tons of webinars like this one, and thank you so much for AWS and DevOps.com for hosting this today. We also have a lot of the AWS resources, which I can have Raj talk about in a second. But we have a lot of things that we've done with AWS over time. You can install us anywhere you want, from EC2s to AWS, say EKS, whatever fits your needs. If you're inside your AWS environment, you can also install it in your own. When it comes to anything cloud native, we're very cloud native based. We're very passionate about that. I'm definitely very passionate about it. See, my voice got all weird. But yes, the thing is that if you need resources, we have resources. Anything you need to know about dev and DevSecOps, really, you've come to the right place. And on top of that, just want to let you know, we also have, some stuff we're doing with AWS in terms of the ISV Accelerator. There's also we have our self-hosted solution. You can actually go and download our stuff out of the AWS Marketplace, just so that you're aware. And the thing is that, when you think about, what you're doing, and you start thinking about, how you want to handle the software bill of materials, it's not that daunting. It really isn't. If you have the right tools and the right attitude, you have the ability to go in there and create it. You have the ability to make it a process. You have the ability to go in there and actually do more than you actually expected. Yes, whether you choose JFrog or not, I would love you to choose our products, of course. But the thing is end-to-end is very important. And just remember, guys, when you're developing software out there, you've got to be safe, right? And understanding what you're using. It's just not just a big pot of just stuff that you put together. You want to know the ingredients. You want to reproduce that stew and do it in a way that you're not going to poison somebody. Nobody wants to poison their guests accidentally by giving them the wrong eggs because you didn't read the date because it was outdated. But the last thing is too, by the way, go ahead and experience this. We actually go to the AWS Marketplace. It's 30-day free trial of the platform running in AWS. Just to do the search for JFrog Enterprise X and Pipelines Artifactory and give it a shot for free. All the materials and everything are readily available for you to go in. We have our wiki page. There's a lot of information that we have and best practices. And I really hope you enjoyed today's webinar. I just want to say thank you. And Raj, thank you so much for co-hosting this with me and Charlene. Absolute pleasure for hosting this too. And I think I've given you just enough time for you to do what you need to do.
Just enough time for me to do what I need to do, but unfortunately that does not include the question and answers. So everybody who did submit questions, I think actually Bill was very proactive in answering those questions. But if you do have a question for either Raj or Bill and you want to go ahead and submit it now before we get to the end of the webinar, that's cool, because these guys are going to get a copy of all the questions that came in. So, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to follow up with you offline. Real quick, just a quick reminder that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of the event, or if you just want to watch it again, you'll have the opportunity to do so. Following the event today, we are going to be doing we're going to send out a link to an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be living on the devops.com website. So you can always go look for it there. Just go to webinars.com/ go to devops.com. I'm getting myself mixed up here. Go to devops.com/webinars. Look in the on-demand section. It should be right there waiting for you. All right, let's get to those AWS gift cards, because clearly that is what I really want to be doing here. And let's take a look at our winners for today's drawing. Our first winner is Vladimir B. Congratulations, Vladimir. Our second winner today is Renato A. Congratulations, Renato. Our third winner today is Scott B. Congratulations, Scott. And our fourth and final winner today is Tan M. Congratulations, Tan. We'll be following up with all four of you via email to get your Amazon gift card over to you. And if you don't see it there in your inbox, please check your spam folder. Bill and Raj, what a great presentation. Lots of good stuff. You guys, software bill of materials is admittedly not the sexiest of topics, but you guys did a great job. And judging from the comments from the audience, you really kind of hit it out of the park. They had lots to say about it. So thank you very, very much for that. And good stuff all the way around. So actually somebody did ask if you're going to share the slides after the webinar. Is that possible or not?
I could probably, it might be a scaled down one. There's some things in there that I'll need to clean up, but we could probably have those as at least a way for you to discuss. I actually think we have them on our website too. But yes, I will make it available. I'll let Charlene know, and we'll see if we can get what we can get to you.
All right, maybe we can attach them to the follow-up email or something like that. So,
Perfect.
all right. Great. Well, Bill and Mark,
guys.
Thank you. And also want to thank the audience for joining me today. This has been a great event, and I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. So, but for now, please have a great day, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe, everyone. Cheers.